Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Today, I have my dear friend Greg Clark joining us. I first met him in person during one of the private event with David Pace. And, he just surprised me because, there are a lot of people out there doing pre-foreclosure, but he approached it with a different way. So now he has turned this into a very successful business. He used to be a bartender. Now he do this full time. So I'll have him talk about it to tell us his story.
Hey, Shani, good to see you.
Hi, good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I greatly appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for having me on to talk about door knocking and pre foreclosures and all the good stuff. When it comes down to pre foreclosures, it's a lot of money that can be made in there, but it's really being of service, and that's what I really love about it the most. I got started back in 2018 with my first real estate juncture. Me and my wife did a flip on a house that we had rented. We kind of stumbled into a deal by accident. The owners of the house actually had a tree fall down in the backyard and they had some health issues. And so they needed to sell. But I didn't understand any of that at the time. They just told me I had to move. And I said, hey, I know you got a guy that's going to buy the house and he's out of Vegas. I was like, can I buy it for the same price? And I did. And next thing you know, the house across the street sold for me. And me and my wife ended up doing a little bit of work on it and sold it and did pretty good. It was like, wow, we just flipped the house and that was easy. But one thing I didn't realize is the reason why we were able to buy that house at such a deep discount is because they had a problem. They had to have it solved pretty quickly. And so that's how I kind of stumbled into pre-foreclosures moving forward by getting a little bit of education on the real estate side.
So you're like an accidental investor, so to speak, right? And your background is not real estate related at all, right? Can you tell us more about that? How did you turn out into doing this? And I know this is your very first one, right? But now you're making almost like equivalent to like a doctor's salary, but you has a pretty humble beginning.
For a number of years, I was a bartender. I started out in a restaurant called Steak and Ale way back when, and ended up bussing tables and working my way up to bartender. And then I went all around Memphis, like opening up restaurants and working at different bars. And so when it comes down to it, like it's you meet 200 random people a day. When you're a bartender, you're pretty much like a therapist. You're confidant. You're a friend, a friendly ear. It's like all the things. And so it really helped me build up a lot of like people skills. And so when it comes down to it, my wife says, Greg, if nobody was around, you would talk to a brick wall. And it's true. When I first started working more so from home, I was having conversations with my dog on a daily basis. But yeah, that's pretty much like how I got started. I remember the last restaurant I worked at, I was doing another side business that just kind of coincides with hospitality a little bit because we were servicing parties. Somebody had asked me, why don't I get into real estate? And I was like, yeah, I don't think I would be good at it. And then, it's kind of funny that years later, I'm actually really good at it.
Right. So why pre-foreclosure? You touch on it's a service, right? Why did you decide to go on that?
When it comes down to pre-foreclosures, most of the homeowners that are in that situation, they have a problem. And the problem is their house is going up for auction and it's going to be taken from them at some point in time. And they have to make a decision on how to solve that problem. Like I said, going back to my first real estate transaction that I didn't realize that I solved a problem. When I did that first fix and flip, we tried to go find another house for a deep discount. Like the only way you can make money by selling a product is you have to buy it lower than what you sell it for.
Right.
And nobody wants to sell you their house for half the price or anything like that. And so you have to solve a problem. Well, when I found out about pre foreclosures, it's like, well, a lot of these people have auction dates coming up and you go in and you try to present something to them. But then once I really started working on them, I got training on them. And once I really start working on them, I found out that a lot of people, the pre foreclosure to auction date is just a symptom. They have a lot of other underlining things that are
Underlying.
going yeah, in their lives. That's kind of where that bartender, gregarious, kind of outgoing personality had a time to shine because, working in hospitality, especially corporate restaurants, they would always push on you is, like emotional connections is the most important thing. And that really translated over to working pre foreclosures because that's the thing that they need the most is like that emotional connection because it's almost like they're in an abusive relationship with the bank. It's really hard to make logical decisions.
Right. And most of these people are just kind of have their heads buried in the sand, right? So they're kind of paralyzed and overwhelmed by the
Yeah.
situation. They're kind of stuck. So
Yeah.
I love that you're coming in to offer them solution. That's what got you in the door.
Yeah, it's like a delicate balance of help and empathy and all those good things. But one of the main parts about being a real estate investor and door knocking, it's literally the fastest way to get a deal, in my opinion, especially if you're in a state that auctions go pretty quick. Some states, they last a little bit longer. But when it comes down to Tennessee, like we have 4 to 6 weeks here once you get an auction date before your house is foreclosed on. If you do normal marketing like direct mail, or if you do cold calling or texting, for examples, yeah, all those things could get deals as well. But going to the door, being face to face and belly to belly with the homeowner and letting them see your mannerisms and different things like that. It's like crucial. So it's one of the reasons why I love door knocking pre foreclosures. It's the fastest way to get a deal.
The conversion rate is the highest that you don't have to spend a lot of money. You just have to put in gas and, do the work.
Right. Right. A little bit of wear and tear in your car.
Not a lot of thinking to it, just
Yeah, you just get right out there, you take action, and you have conversations with the homeowners. I've been out and I've knocked 20, 30 doors a day. It's actually interesting. After every day or every 2 days, like I'll run into somebody and somebody will say, "Thank God you came by," because I had no idea what I was going to do. I had a guy. His name was Dakota. He worked for me a little bit ago, and he was cold calling. And he was cold calling. I think he made like over $1,000. He might have had like two interesting conversations. The first day out, he went door knocking, specifically pre foreclosures, and he had like 5 conversations his first day. I mean, it was like quality conversations. He was like, "This is like night and day from cold calling," and say that's why I love door knocking pre foreclosures.
that's totally understandable. And these people often they're getting bombarded with just tons of phone call and they just basically shut down their phone. They don't answer. And this
Yeah.
is the way to kind of break through. You talk about the mannerisms. Maybe explaining to us how did you approach when you come up to the door? How did you position yourself to get a better chance of
It was a lot of trial and error. One thing that I have is I'm kind of a like an action first and think about it later kind of guy. Right, right. So it's like a trial by fire kind of deal. So when I started door knocking, it was in the pandemic, and so nobody was actually getting foreclosed on. So it was extremely difficult for me starting out. But I think it just helped me kind of hone my skills, just kind of breaking down those barriers right when you go to the door. But like one thing I always tell people is you always want to be respectful of somebody's home, if applicable. Never walk into people's yards. I always use pathways. I always park on the street, maybe on the opposite side of the street if I can, just so I'm like non-intrusive. And one of the things that I do is when I go to the door, I'm really like defenseless. And what do I mean by that? So I did a little bit of research on people that actually knock doors for tree services and pest control companies and different things like that. And one of the biggest things is like you never want to be too close to the door. Like you want to stand back after you knock on it, but you want to turn like your back or your side to the door so you're not squared up. And that's really important because a lot of people, they're looking out their windows, they're trying to see who's there. And if you're like seen as a threat, people are going to be really standoffish on like answering a door or responding to you at all. That's one of the keys. I would also say that one of my biggest things when I go to the door is a lot of people try to think too much about it. I don't. When I go to the door, I'm coming there to see if I can help somebody out of a difficult situation. And if that person doesn't want to open up to me, that's perfectly okay. I still try to leave them with some kind of value.
value. Yeah, that's a big one because a lot of time most of the investor come out, they just basically say, "Hey, I know you're in trouble. I'm gonna offer this much money. Would you be interested?" Most of the people just shut the door like,
Oh
"I
yeah.
don't want to talk to you." But you come out with
Mhm.
a different approach. I love that you're bringing value.
Yeah, 1000%. I had a guy yesterday, and as soon as I walked up, he was sitting on his front porch. I came up and I said, "Hey, how you doing? I'm so sorry to bother you." Like I'm always like a super apologetic for interrupting somebody's day. I'm looking at him on the porch and I said, "Hey, I'm looking for," and the name, it was like a unisex name. It could be male or female. So like I didn't know if it was like this person or somebody else there. And like sometimes you don't know. And sometimes people have family members visiting or friends visiting. You don't want to divulge information to like the wrong person
Correct.
about somebody's particular situation. So I'm always like very reserved with the information until I confirm that it actually is the person or the person's spouse. He just kept saying, like, "What do you need? What do you need? What do you need?" Finally I walked up close to him and I said, "Hey man, I really need anything. I'm just trying to make sure you guys are okay." I said, "I come across a lot of people that are in difficult situations. And this is true. I come across a lot of people don't have lights and don't have food." I said, "Just want to give you some resources if you need it." And he just really opened up to me. And that's what it's all about. I think a lot of people, when they do this, they try to think too much through it. And instead of trying to think through it, trying to figure out something to say that's going to help you out in the situation, I think the better thing to do is just be human. I think the better thing to do is just, I always say, like, when you go to a gas station and you have somebody standing in line behind you and they drop something, what do? You say, "Oh," and then you like instinctively try to pick it up to help that person. It's just like a natural human thing to do. So if you go with like that feeling to the door and not try to be scripted, just say, "Hey, look, I just want to help you. Like whatever it is that you want to do, let me help you." And you'd be surprised how many people open up to you.
Wow. That's the goal there. I think people are, in the end, they're just human like us. We're
Mhm.
trying to build that human connection. So I love how you present yourself and to disarm them. What are the common rejection that you encounter and how do you overcome them? Can you?
A lot of times when you go to the door, people immediately say, "I got it taken care of," or "I don't need your help." It's like the main thing. One of the things I always do is I say, "Perfect. I'm so glad. I was like, let me confirm. Like, I'll come back and say, let me confirm. Let me make sure. So what I'll do is I'll say, I'll look it up when I get home just to confirm it's been taken off. And I'll ask for like a phone number or an email just to kind of capture that. That way I can follow back in with them just in case that's actually not confirmed to be canceled. One of the other things that I do is I'll ask them, how'd you get it taken care of? Because I'm actually going by 3 more houses. And if it's something that I could tell the next family that I'll talk to that'll help them out, that'll be beneficial. You know, a lot of times in this situation, people are trying to avoid actually going in depth in a conversation. So you can tell if somebody's like not being truthful with it. If you're telling a lie versus telling the truth, truths are very specific. If I ask them like how they solved the problem, they're very specific on how they solved it. And if it's a lie, they're kind of all over the place with it. And if I feel like they're not being honest, they're probably telling me this so they don't have to have this conversation. That's perfectly okay. What I still do is I try to leave them with some kind of value. Right? Like if I can let you know who your foreclosure attorney is, if I can let you know when your auction date is, if I can let you know exactly what's going to happen when that auction comes. I had a conversation with the lady 2 days ago. She 100% doesn't want to sell her house. She wants to stay in her house, but she's in a situation where her husband left her after she had a stroke, which is horrible. Like she had a stroke, her husband left her. She doesn't want to leave. She don't want to take her kids out of school. Really nice lady, beautiful lady. She's in a situation where she doesn't have any control because her husband's on the mortgage and the deed. And so the conversation I had with her, I'll have a conversation with him if I can, but let me go ahead and add some value to you now. This might come to a situation where you will lose this house because your name's not on anything. You can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do a loan modification, you can't do this. And I said, well, here's a couple of resources for emergency rentals. So like if you need to move to a rental in a really, really quick emergency situation, this website actually provides housing for people in situations like that. Right. And so I showed her the website. I kind of walked her through it. It only took 5 minutes or so. And then I also let her know that if a foreclosure happens, the new owners of the house are going to come to you and they're going to tell you need to leave. These are the things you need to ask them for on your way out the door. And it's like, do you have to do that? No, but those are the things that come back to you tenfold. And you shouldn't do them with any kind of thought of getting reciprocation out of them, but that's just how karma works. I had another lady call me last night who I couldn't buy her house. This was back in December. She just owed way too much. Her interest rate was really high. And she called me. She said, Greg, you were so helpful before, but now we have to move. She said, can you help us find a place? And I said, sure. I went to a couple of websites and I said, hey, look, here are these 3 numbers. Give them a call. And she was, you're just like a godsend. You didn't make any money. You didn't ask us for anything. Like all you did was like gave the entire time. Those are the things that are wonderful. These are why people leave me wonderful reviews. And this is the reason why people want to open up to me.
And they will come to you. Like a lot of time people don't understand. Like, if you just by leaving a value, when they're ready to sell, maybe years from now, a month from now, who are they gonna call? You're gonna be the first name that come out on their list. So these are great values you share. So thank you very much. So that's kind of changed pace a little bit because I know every state has a different foreclosure law, right? You're in Tennessee, I'm Maryland. How do you find that information?
If I just go to Google and type in Tennessee foreclosure laws, there's a ton of websites, legal websites out there. One that I use in particular is anolo.com. They have every single state foreclosure laws on there, and it will walk you through the process step by step. Every state is different. Every state has their little nuances. So you have federal laws, and you also have the state laws, and the state laws are very nuanced. And this is where you get an opportunity to add a lot of value to your homeowner by learning that process step by step, because most people don't know about it at all.
Briefly touch on the difference between judicial and non-judicial foreclosure.
So here in Tennessee, we're a non-judicial state. Technically, we're actually both.
Oh,
It's just
just like us, quasi state.
right.
It's like the fancy term. Maryland's the quasi state as well, but most of the
Yeah.
banks just with the non-judicial route.
Yeah,
They have
yeah. So judicial just means they have to go through a judicial system. They have to go through the courts to foreclose. And non-judicial, they don't have to go through courts. So the process happens a lot quicker in non-judicial states. Now, Tennessee is actually both, but the majority of foreclosures, I would say 85 to 90% of foreclosures do not go through court. It always goes just through an auction house. 4 to 6 weeks goes really quickly. In the states that have judicial, they usually last about anywhere from 3 to 6, maybe sometimes like 10 or 12 months. Sometimes 2 years, depending on the court process. And so that's the biggest difference between non-judicial and judicial. There's some nuances here or there. It's always a timeline that's associated with the foreclosure, whether they're 3 months behind and they're just getting a notice of default or they're actually getting a notice of sale. These are the reasons why you need to learn what the foreclosure laws are in your state so you can be an expert at knowing when to reach out, when to have these conversations with people, and knowing what their options are going through that process.
So notice of default versus notice of sale, right? So that's my understanding of that is that, notice default is kind of like you're getting the letter from the bank. Hey, we notice you're late. Please pay off. Otherwise, you're going to start the foreclosure process. A notice of sale is a bit later down the road, right? When they set the auction day. So the time urgency a little bit different.
Right. So you're like, your notice of default is like, hey, you're in default. That's You're a couple of months behind on your mortgage, and we're tired of reaching out to you. We've reached out to you several times to let you know to pay up your mortgage. And this could be anywhere from 120 days on. You're a default. We're about to hire a lawyer to foreclose on you. And when you actually get the notice of sale in my state, that's after the attorney's been hired and they've got all their paperwork, everything that's in accordance with the law of Tennessee, how they have to foreclose. And now they issue you an auction date. The notice of sale isn't like now you have a date, like it is definitely on this day, you will lose your house. And so that's the difference between the two. The first one's like it's a warning,
Or
but it's like you're going into the foreclosure process now.
I think in Maryland we have about 2 weeks timeline. Pretty fast that people have to make a decision will
Yeah.
be. Let's talk about a couple of the vacant property that you
Yeah.
discover. Like, it's a different process, right? There's no people that you can talk to. What then?
Right. This is why I love door knocking, because like a lot of times you can't find this information out unless you're actually going to the property. There's plenty of sources where you can get data and you can find out that somebody has like a new address or whatnot, but the fastest way is just go to the property. And so the people that are on the ground that are seeing these things in person, they have like the best data, the best information because they're actually seeing it. We come across a lot of vacant properties. In this past week, I probably came across 5 vacant properties. And these are properties that we call them zombie houses. So they're up for foreclosure, but nobody's living there. And that can be for a multitude of reasons. And you just have to dig into it to get a little bit of information. I had one last week where I came across the property. I'm always looking for this when I go up and I knock on the door. Either an asset management company has taken over the property, like they'll put stickers up when they winterize the property. And if
Like
it's
a letter at the
all
door,
right,
like property
yep.
preservation. I've seen that.
Right,
Yeah.
right. If you see that, you know it's vacant. Lock boxes on doors, different things like that. One of the things I also look for is like the front door or like the side door. Has it been open in a while? If it hasn't been open, you'll see insects have like built nests and stuff like in the corners, like dirt daubers, or you'll see cobwebs and stuff covering the actual seam to where the door opens. You know it hadn't been open in a while. If you see a lot of sticks in the driveway or leaves coming up the driveway, you know somebody hadn't drove back and forth there in a while. That means that the property's not being occupied. Another thing that I do is I'll leave a note on the door. And a lot of times, if you want to confirm that a property is vacant, you leave a note on the door. And then when you come back, if that note's gone, then that means somebody was there. But like if it's still there a week later or 5 days later, you can tell that that property is most likely vacant. So we found one this past week. And one of the things I love to do is go talk to the neighbors. The neighbors know all. And most of the time, the neighbors will be really open with you because if the house is vacant and it's been vacant for a while, they don't want it vacant. They don't want it bringing down their property values. Sometimes you'll end up with squatters in the property, all kinds of stuff like that. And so you'll be surprised that neighbors will tell you all the information you need to know. And so in this particular house that I went to, I talked to the neighbor. She said, well, both of the family members pass away, which is what happens, right? Like what happens to your house when you pass away? Their children ended up inheriting the house, but they couldn't afford the mortgage. And so they just
Would
deserted the
they?
property.
Gosh, yeah. So in that kind of situation, I assume you have to kind of find the David heirship, and if there's a minor children, it will be a different situation, right? Like a
Yeah,
guardian. And
yeah. It comes down to like every state has what's called the laws of intestacy. As long as you know the rule book, how these things fly, I mean, which that's something very easily Googleable. And you could Google that really easy and find out what the laws of intestacy are in your state. And like most people, they die intestate, which means without a will. You know, several people do have a will, but the majority of people that pass away, they don't have a will. And in that, there's just a law of like succession of who the property falls to. And if you know that, you can jump in really easily and help people out. I left my information with the neighbor next door, and she had her daughter call me, who were, I guess, childhood friends with the daughter and the son, who were the heirs of that property. And she's supposed to be getting me in contact with them this week to have that conversation with them. Those properties are gold because a lot of times there's a lot of equity on them. The heirs are just overwhelmed with trying to figure out how to put the property in their name and or deal with the mortgage company. And so if you can come in and provide that service to them of solving that problem, there's a decent amount of money that can be made with those transactions.
a lot of time people don't understand is that those vacant property, like you said, neighbor don't want them, but neighbor could provide so much information. I remember I went to the store and then the neighbor gave me the phone number of the homeowner because they used to talk to each other. So they still have the contact information to reach out. For the getting the authorization part, do you usually, I assume you have to involve like attorney?
In certain instances, I do. It's just making sure you have your paperwork. So, like, if you are new and green, I would definitely say reach out to an attorney and have that conversation of what do I need to make this transaction go through. And a lot of times they'll have a conversation with you. If you reach an attorney that's just kind of standoffish, just go find somebody else. Luckily, I have a really good attorney here in town who's very open. And one of the things that I like about him is he's all about client and customer satisfaction as well. I'm really big on the user experience. It's something that's really big with me. He'll tell me what I need to get transactions done. He'll just kind of give me a checklist. When it comes down to authorizations, once you know what particular document that you need to talk to a mortgage company, you just either print it out or you go get it. I keep third party authorizations in my car all the time to be able to speak to the mortgage company. And just for your audience here, the reason why you need a third party authorization is because the bank will not talk to anybody who is not on the loan. And so a lot of times, especially if you have somebody that passes away, you need certain documentation to be able to prove that that person's passed away and the heir is now the owner of the property. Whoever's on the deed, by law, they have to talk to them. And the reason why is because their name is on the deed. So if the person on the deed asks for a particular type of information about the lien on the property, they have to provide that information. They don't have to provide certain details or aspects about the loan if their name's just on the deed, but they have to provide the information for them to be able to pay off the lien that's on their house. In situations where we come across where people are actually the person that's on the deed, it's really simple. A lot of times you can just call into the mortgage company and just ask for an authorization to speak on their behalf. Just something as simple as that. You'd be surprised a lot of people don't know how to do a lot of this stuff. Like a lot of the homeowners that are in this situation. For instance, I had a lady, this was about 3 months ago. Honestly, she didn't even know she was getting foreclosed on. It was a reverse mortgage. Her husband passed away and they were foreclosing on the house. And the reason why is they didn't do something properly with her name being on the deed. His heirs outside of their marriage, it was about 3 of them, ended up coming into play. They initiated a foreclosure. Well, she didn't know how much was owed on it. She didn't remember the reverse mortgage. She just thought she was going to be there until she passed away. And so just something as simple as me going, letting them know that they were up for auction and she had options, and then sitting in her living room for 10 minutes and making a phone call because she didn't know who was foreclosing on her. She didn't have any of that information. And so I made the phone call, found the information, made the phone call, got authorized to speak to them, and just ordered payoff for them. And like just that simple thing right there just solidified trust with her. And she was, very, very happy to let me help her down the line.
So she's on the D, if I understand it right, but she's not on the mortgage.
No, she was not
Get
on.
past that? Wow.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of estate planning stuff and things that comes down to like recording deeds, nobody educates like the general public on the stuff. Like a lot of people just don't understand how it works. Yeah, banks, they understand it. Mortgage companies, lenders, and attorneys do. Foreclosures actually touched my family a couple of times. Just me dealing with that. And then also being in a business, that's the reason why I know about this stuff. But like the general public, nobody knows how to do any of this stuff. I actually went by, this was 2 months ago. Had a sister and a brother. Their mom passed away. They 100% have the capability to pay up what's owed and stop the auction. But when their mom passed away, they're overwhelmed with grief. And so they're dealing with like trying to plan the funeral and the gathering of the funeral and trying to get a deal
Last on the
together.
list, yeah.
Right. And so now the mortgage is going unpaid while they're dealing with all this. And then they go into foreclosure. And they're like, well, we're taking over our mom's house and it's perfectly fine, but the mortgage company will not talk to us.
That's a good point because people don't understand.
Hmm.
Sometimes when they're in foreclosure, the case is being passed down to the attorney now.
Hmm.
Mortgage company nowadays, they have the loan serviced by a third party servicer, so they don't
Right.
even wanted to. They're not the original bank anymore, so they'll
Hmm.
will go to the talk to the attorney because now it's being handed to loss mitigation in the department.
Right.
They're doing that. So instead of paying to the bank, you gotta pay up to the attorney. So maybe talk to us about like how to find that information, how to order or pay off to pay up their arrear.
There's foreclosure laws in every state. By law, usually they have to post it somewhere publicly. They have to by law. And so if you know the laws, it'll tell you where they have to post it. And if you can find some kind of publication that has the public notices in it, that's where you're going to find that information of like who's foreclosing on you and why. If they have to state why, who's foreclosing on you, and the attorney is usually named in that posting. And a lot of times, if you're talking to a seller in their living room, they have an auction date, they've been sent several letters to the house. There's some kind of mail that's been sent to the house, certified mail, either from the foreclosure attorney and or their lender. With any one of those pieces of information, you can call either or to get information on the other person. So I've called foreclosure attorneys to find out who lenders were when I didn't know who the lender was, or I've called lenders to find out who the foreclosure attorney is. Somebody has that information, but as long as you're authorized to speak to them, then they'll speak to you. And how to get authorized: if you are the person on the loan, you want to have that person sign either a third party authorization authorization and or verbal authorization. If you're not the person that's authorized, you have to show that they have interest in the house. But when it comes down to payoffs and arrears, those are like really important. And I always tell people, like, when it comes down to your arrears, if it comes down to somebody trying to stop an auction or that person trying to pay up what's owed, the arrears are very important. And the reason why is because the number that's on that mortgage statement is not the true number. It's never the true number. You have to call the foreclosure attorney to get the true number, because once the attorney is hired, now his fees are put on top of that. And I see this all the time. It's like a common misconception that if their mortgage statement says they're only behind 10,000, so they just think they have to come up with 10,000. And I tell them, no, that's not the case. Your arrears are 10,000, but for you to reinstate your mortgage, it's going to be above and beyond that because an attorney has been hired on. And so that's a really big difference. But payoffs beneficial as well. And the reason why payoffs are beneficial is it'll tell that person what they owe on their loan total, which is really good piece of information to know. The biggest thing is man can't hit a target they can't see. So I always tell people, like, if you're trying to figure out how to come up with the money, know the true number, know where your target is so you can aim for it properly.
And a lot of time, if you just even just paying partial into it, it won't stop the foreclosure process, right?
No,
So
well,
unfortunately, so people have to understand the balance that they seen on the mortgage statement is not the exact total to stop the auction. They have to pay up all the arrear plus a couple of
yeah,
fees, attorney fee to catch up. And the person, it sounds like, who will know the most accurate information will be the attorney.
1000%.
Wow, that is just so much value that you share with us today. Well,
Yeah.
I'm sure you talk to so many people. Like, if I would like to have you maybe share a couple of case study real quick that think would be interesting to learn, what taught you different approach, like from the past.
I have a ton of stories. When it comes down to working with foreclosures in general, the big thing about it is I believe if anybody's going to work in the space, you have to be an empathetic human being and you have to be patient while people are going through really, really tough times, difficult situations. You have a lot of conversations with people that'll tug on your heartstrings. And if you're not a person that truly wants to help people, like, I don't recommend this is the path for you. For me, it's all about like the user experience. It's all about taking care of the seller, regardless if I make money or not. So that's kind of my outlook on it. We have a lady that I'm talking to right now, and her husband passed away 2 years ago, and she's filed bankruptcy twice, and she's just kind of going, through this emotional thing. And I always tell people I do business with people, not houses. If I can't make your situation better, then I don't need to be here. And when I say that, I truly mean that. I'm all about trying to make sure you can fulfill on your promises at whatever cost. I had conversations with sellers like this. It's like, I'll be honest with you, I don't 1000% know that I can make this happen for you. If you lose, then I lose too. We're going to go down
We will
together.
win.
Yeah. And so like, so one story I actually have for you.
Right. Let's look at some picture. Wow.
All right, so this is one in Memphis, Hillville Road, that I did a couple of years ago. This is a really nice guy. I ran into him when I went out door knocking a couple of weeks ago. He's going to do me a testimonial, but he was so excited to see me. I was driving by the street that I dropped him off at, and he was standing outside. He was like, "Greg, I'm so happy to see you." But this one's over there it's in the Graceland area. And this guy, like, I knocked his door, and when I knocked his door, he ended up coming outside, and we had a brief conversation. He said he had it taken care of, and I said, "Hey, look, if you just need a little bit of time to talk, if you get emotional about something," I said, "I'll be a friendly ear. Like, I don't want anything from you." Like, I was like, "My wife knows what I do." So I was like, he said he had it taken care of, but I said, "If you get stressed out about anything, just give me a call." And he said, "Man, I appreciate it. Thanks for reaching out." And then actually thing for him, I just offered him some value. I was open to him and just said, "Hey, if you feel like talking about anything, just give me a call." Well, he ended up calling me back, and he opened up to me. He said he was in an extremely stressful situation. He said that his wife had passed away and he was about to lose the house, and he filed bankruptcy once. And it was tough for him. And he missed his first bankruptcy payment, and he went back into foreclosure. His income was not where it needed to be to make the mortgage payment on the house. And so he said, "Can you help me?" So I went over and I sat down and talked to him. Ended up finding out that the best thing for him to do was to sell. And the reason why was not only could he not afford the mortgage payment, but every payment that he made to the house did not go into the house solely. It did, but he had to split it with 4 other heirs, because this is why I'm telling you, they don't teach us about estate planning. Because of the way they bought the house, she was the only one that was on the deed.
The D.
He was on the mortgage, but he was not on the deed, which is very interesting. Like, these things happen all the time. And because he was not on the deed, when his wife passed away, through the laws of intestacy, he only got 1/3 of the house. And the kids from outside of the marriage. They had one together and three that she had before she got with him. All of them get 2/3 of the proceeds. And so coming to this realization, he was like, well, I don't want to put another dollar into this house because literally I'm splitting it 5 ways. Every dollar that goes in is split 5 ways. And so he was like, yeah, so the best thing for me is just kind of sell and get out of it. I'm ruining my credit staying here, but nobody else is going to help me with it. And so we helped them facilitate all that.
I have a recently called me. It's the same situation. It's like mom passed away, passed
Mhm.
on to the son, but mom's name is on the mortgage, right? But she doesn't have a will, so it's gonna pass down to the sons and his aunt, the mom's sister. So now they're
Mhm.
in a situation like, well, what are you gonna do? So they have to end up selling it because it's not going straight to one person. You gotta split the pie a little bit, but only the person on the debt on the mortgage is no longer there. So it adds some complexities.
It definitely does. And one of the things I always explain to people when they're in this situation is like, you just have to know your family and know if you guys have a good working relationship. If you guys are good, it's perfectly fine. But one thing you have to realize is a home in this sense is like a bank account and it's several people's name on that bank account. And are you okay putting money into a bank account that has several people's names on it?
Hands on.
And people
Right.
have that, yeah, access to. That's the question you have to ask yourself. I've had people in some situations say, well, this is my family's anyways. Like, I don't care. I love it. But a lot of people, they're just not okay with that. And if nobody else wants to pay the mortgage with them or anything like that, they'd rather be out of that situation. This is my buddy right here. I ran into him a couple of weeks ago. He's going to do a testimonial for me, but he was just in a really tough spot. Really nice guy, though. This is us at the closing table. We ended up getting everything solidified and done. But I remember he just had a rough go at it. Like, I corralled all the heirs. I had the conversations with them. He was kind of estranged from most of them. Of course, he had his daughter, but he was estranged from the other heirs. So I contacted them and I had that conversation with them and got everybody on board with the sale. But he ended up having a car wreck and totaled his car, I think, a week before closing. He didn't go to the hospital or anything, but he had no vehicle. And so closing day, I had to go pick him up and take him up there to closing office. And so that's us in there. And we were sitting actually at the table. And the attorney leaned over and said, all right, we got everything out of the house. Is everything cleaned out? Because after we sign this, after we disperse funds, can't go back to the house. It's like it's done, you
And
know.
hand it over.
Right, right. And he was like, no, man. He's like, I still got my bedroom suit. I still got dressers. He said, still got my car over there. We were at the closing table at that point. And I just looked over at him and I said, it's not a problem. I said, get in the truck. We'll go over there and get it solved. And this is one thing that I'm really big on. This is why I always talk about like fulfillment. I've literally got in the trenches with my homeowners that are dealing with these difficult situations and helped them out. Like I could have hired movers or whatnot, but maybe I did a bad job of finding out if he needed any more assistance and or help. And so because of that, I took it as, well, I need to get down and help this guy figure it out. And so we left the closing office and we went straight to his house and I loaded up all the stuff in the back of my truck and I drove it to his brother's house where he was moving to. When I say I care and I actually will get it done, I will get it done. If nobody else can come in and help you get it done, I will get it done. Every business really is a people business, but like when you're dealing with people in foreclosure, it is 1000% a people business. It is not about the house. Can you help this person move on to the next chapter of their life? Like, can you? This is me moving the stuff. We got his car towed for him that day. When you're empathetic and you care about people, these are the types of transactions that yield a big number.
So what's next for you? I know you're working on kind of building up your team. If anybody want to reach out to you, are you doing specifically only in Tennessee?
Yeah, we're trying to stick right now to our backyard because I have a lot of resources here, but we'll probably be expanding to a couple of other cities probably later on this year. So if someone has a foreclosure situation or they need help having a conversation with the homeowner that's in distress, I have those conversations on a daily basis. You guys can just hit me up at Greg Clark 901 at Instagram. But shoot me a DM and I'll be happy to jump on the phone with the seller, point anybody in the right direction. You know, I just want to see people win.
Awesome. We'll definitely leave your contact information in the description below. So thank you everybody for listening in today. And thank you, Greg, for coming out.
Hey, you're very welcome. It's good to see you.
See you later.